I think one of the major tool that is tied into that strategy is craziness. Because once a person has reached that state of craziness, of cult-like thinking, you cannot reach that person anymore, at least not for a while, with logic and facts and arguments. And now this has been studied, of course, by the Russians and others as well, how you get somebody to that point. And so by using craziness, this is kind of the dirtiest recruitment tactic in all kinds of political camps. So, for example, they tell people, don't just be an American conservative patriot. You got to be a crazy ass MAGA, nutbag. Okay, and then they tell the left, don't just be a social democrat. You got to be an outright total communist. And then they tell the libertarians, well, it's not good enough to be just a libertarian. You got to be a hardcore, what they call an anarcho-capitalist. You got to be the most hardcore libertarian guy. You take that libertarianism and you make it even simpler. You make this whole bag of ideas even smaller, so it looks like it's the perfect answer to everything. And then they just play that game, and by turning people crazy. And also, this has been studied as well by marketing professionals. Like, you can find that in the book by, what is it called, Robert Cialdini. His big marketing book is a classic. You get people to publicly commit to the craziness, right? So people can post stuff on the web, on social media, or they put signs in their yard, or they put stickers on their car, or they have a certain way they dress. It's a pro-Trump crazy nutbag T-shirt, or it's like the woke uniform, right? When they get the nose piercing, they get the specific nose piercing, and they get a clownish type of dress. So they say it's not good enough to be just gay or something. No, you gotta be a certain exaggerated ideological being, right? So don't just be gay. You gotta be a crazy person, and then what happens next? If I'm a company, right, and I need to hire people, who am I going to hire, right? So if people apply for a job in my company, and I look at this one person and I see, okay, it's the clown uniform, it's the nose ring, it's pronouns, and you can pretty much tell from that person's social media profile, that person is nuts, or the ideas are nuts. It's so exaggerated. You can guess you will have a lot of problems with that person. And the same thing if some sort of a German right-wing extremist or let's say a super crazy MAGA type applies for the job, right? And you can tell on social media that person is online after 3 beers talking the most radical ideas, the most crazy stuff imaginable. It's worse than what he puts on his official social media. Would you hire that person if you think, okay, this guy will probably try to recruit others in my company for crazy ideas? Or that person might be involved in criminal activity? Or that person may create a lot of friction if the company doesn't go in a certain direction, right? So it becomes an isolating factor. If you become a crazy and you signal to the world that you're a crazy, you will get negative feedback from the world. And what happens next? That person will more and more withdraw fully into the cult, just severing ties with anybody outside of that cult, because then they feel at home. They feel like they're in a brotherhood, and these people in the cult understand them. Now, that has been studied to death in the 60s and 70s when these new cult movements happened. And the communists were experimenting with mind control stuff, and the Americans too, to a degree. So this is how cults do it. They force you to dress in a specific way. Especially they want you to dress in a ridiculous way, so you get negative feedback from the outside world. And also, if you start to do illegal things, maybe even small things, or maybe things that are in the gray area, you will fall down the hill, as they say. They will roll you down the hill. They will get you in trouble, and then you get more negative feedback, and then you withdraw fully into the cult. Now, it's more severe in Germany, I guess, because of Germany's history, obviously, and the laws in Germany. If you say certain ideas even anonymously, and people find out that it was you, your public life is over. If you pledge allegiance to Nazi ideology, if you believe all the truther stuff, and you just think that the empires have, always been run by this Jewish secret lodge and everything, if they catch you, your life is over. So that also means that your group, your cult, can control you because they know your secrets. So they can start pushing you to do things, to go even further. And there's another element to this. You talk about certain people, and I have these quotes here in your paper. You talk about Haz al-Din, Nick Fuentes, and these weirdos, and a lot of them are very successful on social media, right? They have millions of followers in some cases. Now, how does that happen? Because I mentioned the historical case of Willy Münzenberg. Why was he so successful? Because he was a genius in marketing. Well, he got all this money from the Soviets, and he was playing to a crowd, telling them what they were already expecting to hear. And so if anybody out there is an activist, there's very tough competition, right? Because there's so many other activists, and they want to have the most eyeballs on their platforms. So how do you compete? Now, sometimes people, activists, influencers, they will say radical things. They will tell what the audience wants to hear for the money and the fame. So with every influencer, you look at them and you can speculate, are they doing this for the money and the fame? Do they have other motivations? And with some activists and influencers out there, you have to wonder if they're taking Russian money, because even when you're part of the gang, even when you're part of a foreign operation, there's still competition. Just like with Willy Münzenberg, at some point, higher-ranking communists, they started to hate Mr. Münzenberg. He started to hate them. Everybody wanted the top spots in the movement, and they were fighting dirty. To get the top spot. They were denouncing each other as traitors, and they wanted to get the other guy out of the Communist Party. So this is kind of this very dangerous game that is being played, making people crazy, demanding these commitments. And I think that some of these influencers, they may even have to do some of these provocations to prove their loyalty to the cause. Because if they have backers, if they have networks helping them, these networks want to make sure that this guy is for real. So they may order some of these guys out there, well, you got to say something really tough and crazy about this, that, or the other. Otherwise, your career prospects are not that good. I mean, it's very noticeable that some of these pro-Russian influencers, they tend to repeat a fixed set of talking points. So somebody is creating these talking points. So somebody is in charge, apparently, of making up these points. And then you see this one influencer saying exactly these things, and the other guy saying exactly these things. They don't really add anything to it. They don't leave anything really away. They just follow the script, and then this is what's being taught to these followers out there, and they start using the same script. And they don't care if it's illogical. They don't care if it's completely against the facts, because panic. Because everybody's panicked, everybody's concerned, everybody's depressed, and then it's like this paradoxical propaganda where people say, well, the conspiracy is so strong, the conspiracy is everywhere, they can do anything. But at the same time, they will claim, well, the system is weak, we can take it over. Our weird, agenda, our insurgency has the best chances to succeed because we have Putin behind us, we have the Chinese behind us. It's a done deal. We can just do this. The final victory is just around the corner, and this is kind of the biggest activist scam of them all. By telling these activists they have the best chances of success, right? It's easy peasy. We're going to do this. No problem, right? So just commit to the cause, talk about the cause, get yourself dirty, get yourself involved so you can never live a normal life again because everybody thinks you're crazy. These guys like Jones, I mean, they've become slaves to their own audience, and they've become slaves to the current trend, right? Because in the Bush era, this was sort of like the golden era of Alex Jones. Let's say from 19 97 in the beginning, and then of course the Bush years from 2000 to 2008. This was the golden era of InfoWars, and I remember it was trendy at the time to be not so ideological, right? You know, just this was kind of the underlying current at InfoWars, telling people be for the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. It doesn't matter if you used to be more right wing or left wing. Just find common ground and don't listen to these crazies on Fox News, trashing Muslims from dawn from dawn to dusk or whatever. Just everybody work with each other. This was kind of a trend because people got so tired of the Bush admin, and so he was following a trend. And there were many people who became quite famous during the Bush years. I mean, this was also people on the left like Jon Stewart, I believe, and some others. They had an easy job. They just needed to trash the Bush admin. They just talking about foreign military bases and the foreign wars and the military industrial complex and the corruption and blah blah blah, and the Patriot Act. So it was a very easy job that influencers had at the time, and it was also very easy for Alex Jones to do that job. He only had to use some bits and pieces that he once read from Bird Society books. That was kind of his foundation. And he had a fairly easy job. But then a shift happened in 2008, not just with the Russian effort, but also with the Democrats. Because when the Democrats were in the White House, Jones's previous, the trend was over, and Jones's previous current, there was not much demand for it anymore because people thought, oh my God, the Democrats are taking over. We need some more hardcore right-wing line. And these activists were getting frustrated, I think, even the followers of Jones, because they didn't get the results that they wanted. I mean, they didn't get a new proper investigation of 9/11. They didn't get new people, better people in office. There was no real progress there. There was a lot of talk, but not a lot of substance, right? And this is kind of the biggest critique, I guess, with Alex Jones. I mean, what actual political career has he truly helped? I mean, was there any great politician that was really pushed by Alex Jones over the years? And so people got frustrated. They wanted something new. And so then came other influencers and even more mainstream guys, and they became more popular because they were getting soft on Russia. They were saying that, well, maybe the Russians are our friends. Maybe the Russians are now the anti-communists. And isn't it a nice sounding idea that we have powerful friends over there? And also, it was popular to have connections with the Republican Party because people thought, well, you have to, work with the Republican Party. So Jones kind of went with the trend. He just shifted whichever way the wind was blowing. And so that became sort of an escalating thing because you become a slave of your audience. If you never teach your audience what really matters, the audience will follow trends and they will demand these trends. And somebody like Alex Jones is replaceable. And this goes for any sort of traditional conspiracy influencer out there. They're interchangeable. They all sound the same, so you can replace them. There's a whole menu of people you can choose from. So when this one guy is not following the new trend, you just go to the next guy, right? So I think this was one dynamic. And we saw that even later with the Q movement, when Jones became very irate that these Q guys were taking away his market share. And he was putting out these shows complaining, I'm the original guy. I was there in the mid-90s when nobody wanted to listen to this stuff. I was there in 1997. I was on air on the day of 9/11 talking about all this stuff. And now these young guys are taking my market share. These guys who don't have any real connections. And he even had a debate with the Q shaman. It's this younger guy. He's much younger than Jones, much better looking than Jones, also has no real idea about anything. And so Jones was getting pissed, really pissed, because this shaman was talking like a politician. He wouldn't really say anything, but it sounded nice. And he was a better looking younger guy. So Jones was becoming more and more pissed. But the question really was, what makes Jones better than the Q shaman? Because the Q guys, they were, reading these cryptic postings on a joke message board. reading the tea leaves of what is about to happen, creating this cult. And Jones was having guests on, like Dr. Steve Pachinik, saying the same thing, almost like the Q guys, that a secret team is working to arrest the Democrats. Like, these guys are interchangeable. So I think this one big aspect, when the Russians put in so much effort to convince the world Russia is anti-communism, it changes the trend. So even if Jones never signed anything with the Russians, even in the case that Jones was never really in bed with the Russians were changing. The Russians were changing the trends. The Russians had the bigger power over the conspiracy movement. And so Jones pretty much followed the new trend.